Hey y'all, so today we're going to go back into chapter 10 in the book Women Who Run with the Wolves, and I just want to let you know that the story that opens this chapter is a little bit stressful. The theme is very serious of the criminal element, and it might be stressful to some people. So if you're sensitive to hearing about crimes against other people and things like that, it may be too graphic and you may want to pass this video. And as we go through the additional videos for this chapter, that same theme may come up again as we're discussing the lessons from the story. So I just want to put that out there, that you may want to skip this video and possibly this chapter altogether. I don't want anybody to be surprised. So, but let's dive in and see what the lessons are if you're going to hang in there with me. And I hope that you learn some things. I hope that you enjoy the presentation today. And I just thank you for coming along with me. Hope you're doing well. Okay, so, La Llorona. A rich hidalgo nobleman courts a beautiful but poor woman and wins her affections. She bears him 2 sons, but he deigns not to marry her. One day he announces that he is returning to Spain, where he will marry a rich woman chosen by his family, and that he will take his sons with him. The young woman is crazed and acts in the manner of the great shrieking mad women throughout time. She claws his face. She claws her own face. She tears at him. She tears at herself. She picks up the 2 small sons and runs to the river with them, and there throws them into the torrent. The children drown, and La Llorona falls to the river bank in grief and dies. The hidalgo returns to Spain and marries the rich woman. The soul of La Llorona ascends to heaven. There, the master of the gate tells her she may come to heaven, for she has suffered, but that she may not enter until she recovers the souls of her children from the river. And that is why it is said today that La Llorona, the weeping woman, sweeps the river banks with her long hair, puts her long stick fingers into the water to drag the bottom for her children. It is also why living children must not go near the river after dark, for La Llorona may mistake them for her own children and take them away forever. So that's the version that she gives us. And I think that, you know, she always mentions how these stories that are passed down, you know, throughout generations are different depending on the culture and the person telling it. And I think that she wound up choosing this one because it's just kind of a simplistic version, just a baseline that carries a lot of the same themes that they all have. So then she's going to go into a different version that she says was told to her by a 10-year-old boy. And this version I'm about to tell you from the boy is the one that it seems like she's going to be focusing on for the lessons. It's very similar, but just a few changes. So I'm going to go ahead and share that with you now. So it says, he told me that La Llorona did not kill her children for the reasons described in the old tale. No, no, asserted Danny. This is the little boy that told her the other version. La Llorona went with a rich hidalgo who had factories on the river, but something went wrong. During her pregnancy, La Llorona drank from the river. Her babies, twin boys, were born blind and with webbed fingers, for the hidalgo had poisoned the river with the waste from his factories. The hidalgo told La Llorona he didn't want her or her babies. He married a rich woman who wanted the things the factory manufactured. La Llorona threw the babies into the river because they would have such a hard life. Then she fell down dead from grief. She went to heaven, but St. Peter told her she could not come into heaven until she found the souls of her sons. Now La Llorona looks and looks through the polluted river for her children, but she can hardly see, for the water is so dirty and dark. Now her ghost drags the river bottom with her long fingers. Now she wanders the river banks, calling for her children all the time. So then she gets into a section called the pollution of the wild soul. So you see how the second version was important for the lessons because it was about the river being polluted, right? And we've already discussed that creative flow that we have within us, and it kind of feels like the life force to me, you know, whatever motivates us, and gives us passion in life, you know, however we may direct that, you know. She calls it the river beneath the river, so that's something we've already talked about. So let's get into some of the symbolism here. So this next section, the pollution of the wild soul, I'm going to read that to you. This version of La Llorona belongs to the category that cantadoras and cuentistas call temblón, I think I'm saying that right, shiver stories. These overly entertain, but are meant to cause listeners to experience a shiver of awareness that leads to thoughtfulness, contemplation, and action. Regardless of the shifting motifs within the story over time, the theme remains the same, the destruction of the fertile feminine. Whether the contamination of wild beauty takes place in the inner world or in the outer world, it is painful to witness. In modern culture, we sometimes count one as far more devastating than the other, but both are equally critical. Although I sometimes tell this two-version tale in other contexts, when understood as a metaphor for the deterioration of the creative flow, it causes women to shiver with knowing aplenty. If we view this tale as the condition of a single woman's psyche, we can understand a good deal about the weakening and wasting of a woman's creative process. As in other stories that have harsh endings, the tale is instrumental in teaching a woman what not to do and how to back out of poor choices in order to lessen negative impact. Generally, by taking the opposite psychological tact to that chosen by the protagonist in the tale, we can learn to ride the swell instead of drown in it. This tale uses the metaphors of the beautiful woman and the pure river of life to describe a woman's creative process in its normal state. But here, when interactive with a destructive animus, both the woman and the river decline. Then a woman whose creative life is dwindling experiences, like La Llorona, a sensation of poisoning, deformation, a desire to kill off everything. Subsequently, she is driven to seemingly endless searching through the wreckage for her former creative potential. So to tie in the theme of narcissism, as we've done throughout this book, I'm sure that this resonates with you, because it does for me. When you are in the presence of a destructive force embodied in, you know, a narcissistic person, their presence, their energy, it's and you feel like you're, you know, that absolute light inside of you feels like it's just dwindling and dimming and getting, you know, snuffed out. It does take away that motivation inside of you. It does take away your drive, your passion for life in general, and so it obstructs that creative flow, you know, from above, from the divine. It's you're stuck. And I remember in one of the past videos I mentioned to you all how I felt just stuck and frozen, and that's what happens. And so it's like when you cut that off, when you cut off that energetic flow, I think it's a snowball effect, and it's just so many different results come from that. Negative results come from that. And so let's just see what else it's got to say. It says, in order for her psychic ecology to be righted, the river has to be made clear once again. Yes, because remember, it's polluted, right? And I feel like that's what negative energy does to us. It's obstructing, it's polluting, it's all the bad things, unfortunately. It is not the quality of our creative products that we are concerned with through this story, but the determination and care of our creative life. Always behind the actions of writing, painting, thinking, healing, doing, cooking, talking, smiling, making is the river, the rio abajo rio. The river under the river nourishes everything we make, and I would say everything we do, you know, from your thoughts, your I mean, because everything starts with a thought, you know, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions. It's like we're we're being poisoned from the get-go. When you're subjecting yourself to this negative energy day in and day out, it's going to impact us in so many ways. And yet I think we can get caught in blaming ourselves, because we're encouraged to blame ourselves. Narcissists use shame to make us self-convict when really we shouldn't be. And because we are the type of people to take accountability, and so they know that we're empathetic in that way, and so they just exploit that empathy that we have, and just the heart that we have inside of us. They exploit that so that they can control us through shame. And so many ways that they poison our life, unfortunately. So then she goes into talking about the symbolism of water, and different areas of the river, and she even gets into the relation of a river to a woman, and a woman's body. and I think she's symbolizing that specifically. I feel like with regards to it's really beautiful. The way she presents this is beautiful and intelligent, and she presents it in such a manner. This is why I encourage you to get the book yourself and read. But it's about passion. It comes down to passion, for life in general. And so she says, but sometimes, as in the tale, a woman's creative life is taken over by something that wants to manufacture things of ego only. Yes. Which have no lasting soul worth. Exactly. These people are like zombies, there's no life in their eyes. You can see it. Sometimes there are pressures from her culture, or from a narcissistic person in your life, that say her creative ideas are useless, that no one will want them, that it is futile for her to continue. That is pollution. That is pouring lead into the river. That is what poisons the psyche. Yes. She says, when there is too much soulless manufacturing, toxic waste pours into the pure river, killing off both creative impulse and energy. So it's pretty straightforward. You can't expect to be healthy, body, mind, soul, when you're continually subjecting yourself to a negative person or environment. It's just not going to happen. And so yes, we have to learn, I think, until we can remove ourselves from the chaos that these people create. I think that we need to learn to, put up some protective barriers, like psychic barriers, and stop absorbing this negativity that they're constantly, just shooting our way. And so that's the first step, is to put up that protection, that psychic protection. And so after that, then we can start to take some time away, going to that place of solitude where we can think without all the chaos, and plan, an exit. And so you have to consider safety and things like that too. I know it's not easy, but so once you've removed yourself from that, toxic environment, which I think is the first step, then the next step is to, rewire your brain again, and to rid yourself of all that pollution, rid your spirit of all that pollution, remove that obstruction to that creative flow, that life force, the passion that the divine wants to pour into our spirit, to motivate us to engage with life in a fruitful manner, to manifest beautiful outcomes in our life and in the lives of others. So the next section is called Poison in the River. So the next section opens by saying there are many myths about the pollution of and the sealing off of the creative and the wild. She goes into some examples, talking about a fog and the symbolism of that, and a spring that seeds land, and so it's all about pulling in the symbolism of nature. And she says the most common effect of pollution in women's creative life is loss of vitality. Yes, exactly, like that life force. This disables a woman's ability to create or act out there in the world. It says, just like I was talking about, when you have that life energy pouring into you, when you're aligned with the divine is the lens I like to use, then you're going to be motivated. You're going to have a good and positive and nourishing animus, working actively within your spirit, within your soul. Everything's going to just be lined up, and it's not only going to be you that benefits, it's going to be others. So she gets into talking about cycles. And how they're natural. It says in the natural cycle there is restlessness and impatience, perhaps, but there is never a sense the wild soul is dying. We can tell the difference by assessing our anticipation. Even when our creative energy is involved in a long incubation, I already said that, sorry. We still look forward to the outcome. Yeah, so there's still hope, there's still and that engagement in the creative process in the mind is still going. It hasn't just halted, right? We still look forward to the outcome. We feel the pops and surges of that new life turning and humming within us. Exactly. But when the creative life dies because we are not tending to the health of the river, that is another matter entirely. Then we feel exactly like the dying river. We feel loss of energy. We feel tired. There is nothing creeping, rolling, lifting leaves, cooling off, warming up. We become thick, slow in a negative way, poisoned by pollution, or by a backup and stagnation of all our riches. Everything feels tainted, unclear, and toxic. That's like that brain fog, that happens when you're under the control of a manipulative person, and it's intentional. It's they want you to be stuck and even dependent on them in some ways, because they get you to doubt yourself so much, and they're just getting your attention so much on them that it's like a I definitely think that a lot of people talk about fear of exposure that narcissists have, because they are living a hidden life, and they're, what you're seeing is the mask. They wear this mask, and truly you don't, they hide who they really are, in other words. But I think that fear of abandonment is real too, because they work so hard to keep you snowed over and to keep you from rising to your own potential for a reason, so they don't want to lose you as supply in all the ways that they're able to exploit you and all your beautiful qualities. So they're wanting to keep you stuck, is my point. They're wanting you to stay stuck, and you're going to do that when you're doubting yourself, and you're going to be doubting yourself if you're not connected to that inner guiding light. So that's, to me, that's the critical point, the foundation of your self-confidence, of your motivation in life, of your you're looking on the bright side, your lightheartedness, your joy, your laughter. That's at the foundation of all of it. Just being and staying connected. So it says, how might a woman's creative life become polluted? This sludging of creative life invades all 5 phases of creation. This is interesting. Inspiration, so it starts here, right? Concentration, organization, implementation, and sustenance. Women who have lost one or more of these report that they can't think of anything new, useful, or empathic for themselves, or empathic for themselves. Yes, so it's that brain fog. She talks about organization, how it's like you just can't get organized. Everything feels scattered and incomplete. You lose such motivation, and you're so confused. It says you just want to wish things into being, so it kind of pushes you into like this this magical way of thinking, where because you just can't seem to pull it together and get organized, it's like you're living in chaos. That's a simple way to sum all this up, in here and in reality and everything else. They narcissists create that for you, a life of chaos on purpose. So It says when you're under attack by those around you, and then it becomes like voices in your head. It's kind of like you internalize all of these criticisms and all the chaos. It becomes part of your self-talk, and it's critical, and it's self-condemning and all that. So it's just very unhealthy. It says there is another story that describes the same process, but uses different symbolism. In Greek mythos, there is an episode where the gods decree that a group of birds called the harpies shall punish a soul named Phineas. Each time Phineas's food is magically laid out, the flock flies in, steals some of the food, scatters some, and defecates on the rest, leaving the poor man ravenously hungry. That's pretty bad. So she says, this tale was most definitely a temblon. I guess I'm saying that right. Temblon, a shiver story. It makes us shiver in recognition, for we have all experienced this. The harpy, she calls the harpy syndrome. It destroys via denigration of one's talents and efforts. Yes, I have an interesting story about talents and efforts, and I'll share that towards the end. I'll hold off for now. It says, so it destroys via denigration of one's talents and efforts, and through a most disparaging internal dialogue. A woman brings up an idea, and the harpy shits upon it. She does say that. So, yes, the woman says, well, I thought I would do this and this, and the harpy says, that's a stupid idea. No one cares about that. It's ridiculously simplistic. Well, mark my words, your ideas are all dumb. People will laugh. You really have nothing to say. This is harpy talk. Yes, this is also narc speak, yes. And then she goes into talking about, she says, excuses are another form of pollution. And I'm not saying that's not true, but honestly, I view, it depends on who it is making the excuse. If it's you, and you've been put through narcissistic abuse, and you've lived through that toxic environment for quite a while, I think that excuses can be part of being stuck. It's almost like I view excuses as a result of that pollution, that polluted environment, even environment here that the narcissist created for you. So I think it depends. And then of course narcissists are full of excuses. That's a totally different type of excuse. So I think it just depends, but I don't think we should vilify excuses. I don't think that they're necessarily, you know, she says another form of pollution. I think it depends, you know, on how you want to look at that. But it says, you know, she goes to examples like people that say, I can't find the time, I don't feel like it right now, my mood isn't right. And I think that if you're in balance, this is my point, I think that if you are in balance and you have that that flow, that creative, life-giving energy flowing through you in a healthy manner, because either you haven't been subjected to narcissistic abuse or you have healed from it and you have restored that again, then you're not going to be making excuses. You're going to be in alignment with that passion for life. You're going to be acting in your best interest and in the best interest of others. You're going to be in that, living in that flow. So I don't think excuses are going to be part of your life. So again, I just maybe what she means is like, I think excuses are, instead of another form of pollution, I think excuses are a result of pollution. Because if you get your mind right, you're not going to be making excuses, you know, no matter who you are. And that's just my 2 cents. I'd love to hear your opinion on it, though. So that's the next, that's 2 sections that we reviewed today. And then the next section is called Fire on the River. And this is really interesting. It opens by saying, back in the 70s, and I can't pronounce the name of this river, the Cuyahoga River at Cleveland became so polluted it began to burn. So that's really interesting. So we're going to go into that, and that's actually several pages long, that section. And then she talks about the man on the river, and that's also several pages long. So maybe we can put both of those 2 sections together in the next presentation, the next video, or I'll just have to get into it and see, because remember, I don't read ahead. I just read right before I present to you all, so that we can I can be fresh, you know, on my mind, and also we can kind of process together. So I hope that you've enjoyed today's presentation. I thank you guys for coming along with me, and I just hope that you have a beautiful day, and I will see you soon. you.